So we don't center the traditional our Einsteins or the Mark Zuckerbergs, right? We really talk about Gladys West, right? That we would literally be lost without her. We couldn't get anywhere from the grocery store to our favorite concert to a friend's house without that GPS technology. And we need to recognize that our girls don't need to be invited to a place that their lineage, their foremothers and aunties have already blazed a trail for.
Welcome to Journey to Impact. I'm here with Nikole Puri, CEO of TechBridge Girls, and really excited for this conversation with you this morning. I want to just start with an overview. Can you tell us a little bit about TechBridge Girls and its mission?
Thank you so much for having me and being able to talk about this amazing organization called TechBridge Girls. We were founded almost 24 years ago because we understood that STEM education was not working for Black and Brown girls. And in our earlier years, we were providing after school programming in schools in DC, Oakland, California, Seattle, Washington area. But what we learned in that process was our girls are ready, willing, and capable to lead into this STEM innovation generation. And what is often the challenge is the adults who have the ability to influence their persistence in their STEM journey. So for TechBridge Girls, our mission is to re-engineer STEM education that celebrates, centers, and creates a sense of belonging for Black and Brown girls across the country. And we do that by equipping educators with curriculum and training that is equitable, responsive, and relevant to the identities and backgrounds of the girls in which we serve.
Yeah, and you're doing that work all over the country, right? Across at
All
least
over the
28
country.
states. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about your STEM curriculum? And also, I'd love to dive a little deeper into something that you've touched on, which is that sense of belonging. Oftentimes, when we talk about STEM education, it's science, it's impersonal, it's tech, it's engineering. But can you touch a little bit more on, as part of your curriculum, how important is that sense of belonging as you carry out your work?
What we've learned in our 20-year history is that we have to center the girl in order for her to see herself in this future of STEM, right? And so what we have created around our curriculum is what we call our equity framework. And our equity framework is based on really three pillars: being STEM, using STEM, and doing STEM. So being STEM is about reimagining, but also reaffirming the women and people of color who have already blazed a trail within STEM. So we don't center the traditional our Einsteins or the Mark Zuckerbergs, right? We really talk about Gladys West, right? That we would literally be lost without her. We couldn't get anywhere from the grocery store to our favorite concert to a friend's house without that GPS technology. And we need to recognize that our girls don't need to be invited to a place that their lineage, their foremothers and aunties have already blazed a trail for. So that's the first thing, is being STEM is about beyond just the representation, but being able to show our girls that their identities are actually represented and have been leading in this field for generations. Using STEM is really the application of STEM education. So it's the rigorous learning of STEM education, but then done in a relevant way through hands-on experiences. So it's not only giving our girls the opportunity to tinker, but it's also giving them relevance of how STEM shows up in their everyday lives. I think so often we make STEM education feel like it's that thing over there, whereas actually it's our everyday existence. And so how do we make it relevant so that our girls understand it's part of their lives, and we want them to be able to drive and dictate how it is part of their future. And then the last aspect of our framework is using STEM, right? Using STEM for the greater good. We know that girls really want to have purpose-driven lives that allow them to change the possibilities of what a future could look like. They want to change the world. It is the capes that we put on in elementary school. And unfortunately, as we get older, those capes get a little bit shorter and then ultimately disappear. Not because the girls don't have that starting belief, but it's from the society and the social constructs that create it. So for us, using STEM is about translating the power of these disciplines in the ability to change the world and change their communities and change the future that they want to see themselves thrive in. So that framework is fundamental, but the through line is really about how do we activate educators, especially in the out of school time space, to really advance those principles within the framework. And belonging is the thread. If our girls don't have a sense of who they are in their full authentic selves, with the agency that they need to continue to navigate in this field, then those pillars just become words on paper. But it's the educator or the environment that we're creating in that sense of belonging, addressing the social emotional development of girls, being responsive to the caregiving duties or the safety issues that girls from a gender perspective have to navigate, not like their male counterparts. It is about creating spaces in the visual view of I see myself in this amazing person who has blazed a trail in this field so that I can aspire to do what she does, but even better and further.
And that's such a powerful thing because in so many areas of life, I think we all know the power of mentorship, being able to see someone who looks like you, maybe thinks like you, comes from where you come from, and has brought themselves into a space that maybe you didn't think was possible for yourself. That's such a powerful thing to do. So that's really incredible. And I know you're also focused on STEM education advocacy. How do those pieces fit together?
As we've learned over time, it is a powerful thing to support one girl at a time. We get to see it, we get to touch it. We see our Eileens come from middle school and now is a data scientist, graduate from UC Berkeley, who's now working at a Fortune 50 company in STEM. We love those stories. We understand the importance of those stories. But we also know one girl at a time, it is not moving at the pace of the gap that we are seeing in our landscape and society and our competitiveness. What we have made a conscious decision is utilizing re-engineering our STEM education as our proof of concept, being still connected to the community and the participants of our work, that then generates the policies or the practices or the narratives that need to change and be modified. So not only are we supporting one girl at a time, but we're trying to change a larger system that will floodgate change an immense amount of girls in their trajectory around STEM. So our shift was really about utilizing our experience, but taking it up to a system level that will really make the necessary and foundational changes that will allow our girls to successfully persist in this field.
Yeah. And you talk about the changes in the space and how you've evolved. I'm just curious, how has this whole landscape that you've been working in changed over the past 5 years? And where do you see it heading in the next 5 years? All of STEM, all of technology, really, for example, now is responding to the rise of AI, and that could change programming jobs, it could change engineering jobs. How is all that factoring into your work as you think about your mission moving forward?
Well, STEM education has always, I feel, in this 25-year or 24 years of our existence, has been this thing that it was a nice thing to have experience and exposure to. I think what is very clear in the last 5 to 10 years, especially during the COVID years, that technology is a necessary reality for our ability to thrive as humanity, right? In many ways. The distinction is Yeah, it'll be fun to be able to talk to FaceTime my friends who live on the other side of the country once in a while too. It is literally my business model to continue to ensure my business can thrive, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's the biggest thing is like the shift of like literally our dependency on this discipline that is so connected to the reality of how we have to live our life in our future, right? So I think that's the biggest shift. And unfortunately, like I started my career in technology and being part of fast moving technology, DSL at the time. And we know that innovation moves faster than social consciousness, right? We are building these amazing technologies around AI and doing all this work. But as Dr. Joy, who leads Algorithmic Justice League, has talked about, is like there's so much bias that is being perpetuated in this technology. I always say, based on her research, is if her face recognition because of her ethnic background is not recognized in kind of the AI technology, then what that says is I am not recognized for the future,
Hmm.
right? And so that huge disconnect continues to perpetuate what I think actually technology will be able to help us do is reduce some of this bias and inequities in our world, but it's only going to do that when we have enough voices, backgrounds, experiences, diversity, inclusiveness, and belonging at the table to help us rewrite the story that and unleash the power that technology actually could really have in our society. So it's moving faster than our consciousness, and there is going to be ultimately a reckoning to that. What we hope at TechBridge Girls is that we are getting our girls prepared to be able to step into that reckoning and rewrite a new story for what technology can be for us all in the future.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And I think it's a very powerful point that the most important thing in many ways we can learn is just how crucial STEM and technology are to everyday life now, and how the most important skill in many ways is to be able to just adapt because everything is moving so quickly. What are the challenges you face as an organization in STEM education for BIPOC girls? Some of the challenges you could highlight for folks who are out there listening and maybe getting excited and wanting to help. And if you could, if you have one available, what's maybe a surprising statistic that you could share?
Sure. I think we talk about just the reality of the representation of STEM education, which is less than 3% Black and Latina women represent the STEM workforce right now. And that is a huge gap between what I see every day, that there is no shortage, right? But what I understand, there is a retention problem. There is a progress in our girls' ability to continue and persist in this. I say that the representation is low, but then I also think about the amount of funding that is actually available. There is a lot of resources and chatter that has changed over the last 5, 10 years around girls in STEM education. And the reality is that there is this overemphasis on making the girl more interested versus really looking at the
Mm,
system and all of the other factors that are preventing our girls' persistence. There is no shortage of our girls' interest when you actually do this right. And we have seen that over the last 24 years, right? But what there is a lack of is investing more deeply into the ecosystem that supports our girls' persistence and investing in those adults that kind of play gatekeeping responsibilities for our girls' ability to progress in there. Those I think are like the statistics is of course the small number of Black and brown women who are
mhm.
entering in the STEM force, STEM workforce, the amount of investment that is actually focused intentionally and explicitly on Black and Brown girls and women progressing and persisting toward the workforce, and also the challenge of it's not just the discipline, it's not just the educational aspect, but we have to look holistically of what is impacting our girls' ability to actually thrive and persist in this area of focus.
Yeah. And can you share a story? I think that would be really powerful for the audience to understand how these challenges are playing out in the lives of the girls that you're serving and supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to tell the story because it's like a beginning and end story of our powerful alum, Eileen Iniguez. 8 years ago, when I started at TechBridge Girls, my first kind of focus was to get to know who has been part of this amazing community at the time for over 15 years. And I had an opportunity to meet some of our alum, and Eileen was one of those that answered my call to chat. And she was just getting ready to complete her degree at UC Berkeley in data science. She joined TechBridge Girls as a middle schooler from East Oakland, California. She always tells the story that she came because she saw the flyer around free pizza, and that was what hooked her to coming to the organization or to the program at her school. And what she did not realize, that call of a slice of pizza would change the trajectory of her life. Over her middle school career, she stayed with TechBridge Girls. We had connected her to role models, giving her exposure to careers and opportunities, stayed connected to her as she got into UC Berkeley. As I said, I met her as she was planning to graduate. And in our conversation, we talked about what was next. Now, if you can imagine Latina, UC Berkeley, data science, there should be no question where she's going for her future, right? She should have a whole list lined up anywhere she wants to go. And she said very apprehensively, I don't know what is next. So I'm thinking, like most Berkeley kids, is it because you're going to go travel the world for a year? I don't know. Like, they just have a whole different world. And I don't have a job yet. And so it just clicked to me in that moment, because being a girl of color who has always held a high level of excellence in my trajectory, that I understood why. Because she did what everything that she had to do, she did right. She went to class. She probably had a side job to make sure ends could meet for her to stay in the school. She got good grades. She really buckled down and stayed out of trouble and did what she needed to do. But unlike our male counterparts, especially our white male counterparts, we often forget about the power of social networks and social capital. Building a network of people who can open doors, who can say our name in spaces, who can be talking about us even when we're not in the room. And that is often a perpetuated challenge that women have experienced in their careers, because we're so focused on knowing that we have to do the very best that we have to do, that oftentimes building our social capital is not part of that scenario that we automatically lean into or think about. When she told me this story, I literally said, let's see how many of my partners and funders want to walk the talk. And literally just started picking up the phone for her and saying, she's getting ready to graduate. This is where she is. This is what she's looking for. When can she have her interview? Not, do you need her? When is it that you're going to schedule her interview? And before the end of that month, she had a load of interviews, and shortly after had 2 extended job offers. And one of those job offers came from the organization that she was exposed to first in a field trip at TechBridge Girls. And so she remembers walking on the campus of that organization and being wowed by it. And now she gets to literally not only walk on that campus, but has been traveling the world and lived in other states because of this company. And so that is the type of success that we are seeking, right? And we're seeking it for her to show up in her authentic self, to knowing her worth, to knowing her value, and then having the voice to change what is not right to right as she's navigating her own career journey. And I see that every day, no matter if it's her LinkedIn. I think she's getting ready to speak at a Latina conference around STEM education about her journey, to her being elated when she took her mom overseas for her mom's first international trip in that
Mm.
capacity. And that is what we hope and seek for every TechBridge girl or every girl that has exposure to really show up in their full authentic self in their STEM journey.
Yeah, and that is so impactful because not only then are we bringing diversity to the people that are building these technologies that underlie so much of what we do today, but also for that individual, she's on her own journey to impact now. And so she can buy a home, she can take her
Mm-hmm.
family on trips, she can invest in her future, maybe even other small businesses in her community. And it has such a huge ripple effect, especially given the opportunities that have been available in the tech space for so long. So that's a really incredible story. I personally love to hear those stories. I had a similar journey, and it's just so powerful. When folks think about supporting TechBridge Girls, can you give us some perspective on how can every dollar contributed change STEM education? Because this really is about systems change. So how can each dollar donated change the system? And if possible, I think it would be powerful again to have an example. But just curious to hear your thoughts there.
Absolutely. Funding is the engine that allows us to advance the mission of our work. A great example of funding that has come to us as an organization, no matter if it's from an individual donor or a institutional funder that has committed to providing general operating grants, which have been revolutionary for this organization, because we started, as my leadership started when I came in the organization, we were serving about 700 girls across 3 cities. Now we're serving over 350 educators that reach over
Mhm.
14,000 Black and Brown girls across over 25 states. That is not only the investment in our programmatic scale, but that is also the investment in our infrastructure to have sustainable growth that will meet the needs and navigate the circumstances of our realities today. I think about funders who stepped up during COVID and really gave us the ability to still innovate and be creative, but also serve our students in their immediate need and be able to utilize those immediate needs as the precursor to being the program that we have the ability to scale the most right now, right? So that seed of letting us have the ability to continue to innovate, but also meet the needs, was fourfolded into now one of our most exciting and largest scaled program in the organization, our Ignite program. And so I think that one of the things that is important as funders engage in any organization, especially organizations like TechBridge Girls, especially when you've done the work for so long. We have the impact. We know that our girls are twice more likely than the national average to pursue STEM careers. They're engaging and enrolling in AP calculus at higher rates than the national average. We know that our educators are changing their pedagogy and behaviors and spaces so that our growth can thrive. When you understand we have the good product, right? What is the investment in the infrastructure to ensure that product can scale? And I think that is a really important insight that sometimes is missed by funders, because we understand you want to fund the thing, but there has to be some engine behind how you
Mhm.
fund the thing, like investment in the engine that has to advance the thing. I would say those are the areas of how to invest. TechBridge Girls utilizes Charity Navigator as our baseline focus of ensuring that our programmatic toward administration ratio stays aligned with best practices. We are extremely transparent with our donors and our funders. Like when we want or have a really great idea, or we're in a transitional period that we need more like administrative investments, we talk
Mhm.
about that and have very open conversations that will hopefully allow our funders continued confidence, but also be able to see the fruits of their labor when they see the fact that we've moved such the needle in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'd love to dive a bit deeper. You mentioned how technology, especially now, moves faster than our consciousness. And I think it's a really powerful point. Can you dive a little deeper into that, and why it makes it, to your mind, potentially, not to put words in your mouth, but to your mind, why might that make it crucial for donors to act now rather than later, because of that speed? Do you see those two things as interrelated?
Yes, I do see those two things interrelated, and I'll actually give a story about how I started my career. So I started my career, like people always laugh at me, but I was really part of a team that was bringing digital subscriber line, high speed internet as like a consumer product, right? So for folks of that age, we all remember dial up, and we were in the moment of the transition from dial up. And hindsight, thinking 20 plus years ago, we were in the midst of the digital divide without utilizing those actual words, but also not even conscious about what the power of this new innovation was going to do for some, but not for others.
Mm.
I think the conversations, when I think about the conversations in those rooms, it was the excitement about the possibility of what was unknown and that was being unlocked through this technology. And that excitement, like the opportunity and the possibilities outweighed everything else. So that really was the driver. And of course, there is a financial aspect, right? We live in a capitalistic world, so of course the financial aspect of that too was driven. I say that being part of that level of innovation, sometimes it's not even a conscious thing. If I didn't come from the work and my background and where my degree was, I don't know if I wasn't in the room to say, like, how are communities that don't have our fiber optic lines going to be able to access this, right? It was just going like a steamboat, like at full speed ahead, that it's hard to get the consciousness because consciousness is like intentional, right? It takes
Mhm.
time, it forces you to pause, and you don't always have that time when innovation is moving fast, right? So, where I think the connection with funding is as much as the world, the capitalistic world that we live in, is going to fuel that innovation and ensure that the investments in the tech and the resources are enabled to help that done. Where I see philanthropy playing a role is increasing the consciousness and investing in the consciousness so that
Mm.
the speed of both can move at the same rate. Because
Yeah.
normally, what I would assume is it's already taken off. How can we pull it back now? But if it was resourced at the same level of rigor, then what
Mhm.
can it actually move at the same speed? So I think that's where philanthropy can play a huge role. And that is
Yeah.
the research, the investment in research, the investment in thinking about evaluation and assessment, thinking about how to fund the development of social constructs and putting that as a lens and a step in the process that is critical, essential. It's where I think policy and things can also play a place. It's like, how are we making space for consciousness, but then how are we investing in consciousness so it can also move at the same speed of the innovation?
Yeah, that's
And I don't know how
yeah,
you
that's an
actually
amazing
do that,
answer.
but I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a conscious, like some way to be more intentional about
Yeah, and I think that answer could apply to a lot of different realms where philanthropy could step in. Oh, very good food for thought. And then we've got just a few minutes left, but what about beyond dollars? I spend a lot of time, for example, at salesforce.org, and not a lot of people of color, not a lot of BIPOC employees. But if someone out there at Salesforce or other companies working in STEM in particular is interested in supporting and they want to volunteer, what are some opportunities there?
TechBridge Girls, as we pivoted our model outside of the direct service or after school programming, we have less opportunities for folks to like volunteer in our programs. But what we have seen as really critical support is like when organizations bring their expertise. So
Mm,
when we're in the midst of exponential scale, how do we ensure that we have the right infrastructure and technology to support that scale, and that we have the right knowledge base and training for our staff to actually do it? You named Salesforce. That's a perfect example because we actually utilize Salesforce CRM technology, and we're always trying to figure out how can we utilize it better? How can we equip our staff to utilize it better? Are we utilizing it to optimizing our strategies and helping us make decisions? So being able to have that expertise in our to support our organization and our thinking is always really great. Marketing and PR and legal. I always say for nonprofits, those are luxury at sometimes, especially organizations at our size, luxury type of talent and resources for an organization. So being able to provide those type of skills and knowledge to an organization, for especially like us who is in this place of exponential growth and we're like getting ready. I think about us as like this slingshot moment, right?
mm,
So for the last 3 years, we've been pulled real tight. That tension has been us thinking more intentionally about our operations, being in this place of growth and scale, building out our team and our strategies. And now we're almost at that point of being let go to these new heights. And so having these resources and levels of knowledge in the organization to help support and navigate us is always really important. Being a connector, I think that oftentimes, especially organizations that are led by people of color, we don't always sit in the rooms and don't get invited to the rooms. And often donors, folks in philanthropy are in those rooms and in those conversations. So I always tell the team member the best thing that can happen to us is that we are in the room when we are not physically in the room, meaning somebody is advocating for us. Somebody is singing our praises. Somebody is saying, did you know about this organization? Somebody is following up to connect us to other
mhm.
opportunities to sustain our work and mission. So those are the areas I think bringing your talents to organizations like TechBridge Girls to help us support our area of growth and advancement of our mission, being a connector for the organization to open up new doors, and then also supporting our advocacy work. So as we continue to build out what we call our belonging blueprint, which is our advocacy framework to say we need better data, we need better resources and funding for our communities, and we need better environments and spaces where our girls feel like they belong. Be a part of that call to action and help us advance that message to larger places of influence for change.
Thank you. I think for anyone on their journey to impact, thinking about supporting tech rich girls or driving impact in the space you operate in, there's a lot to chew on there. And I hope folks will take action. Thank you for joining us today on Journey Impact. Again, this has been Nikole Collins Puri with TechBridge Girls. And I know you have a November 15th program information session coming up, so folks should check that out. But otherwise, how can folks find out about TechBridge Girls just as we close up here? How can they learn more about your work?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to chat today. It has been so fun to just chat about the organization and be a part of this community. And I hope that we stay continued connected as both of our trajectories continue to grow and expand. But if you want to learn more about TechBridge Girls, please follow us on all social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, X are all great places to find out what is the latest information about the organization at TechBridge Girls or TechBridgeGirls.org website. So those are places where you can stay connected, be informed, and help us re-engineer STEM education for Black and Brown girls across the country.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. Really love the conversation. And good luck to you in all your work.
Thank you so much. Take care.